given that we've had a wonderful time hearing from all of you, would the two of you just take a moment to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do and what inspired you to get into this industry?
Go ahead. I'm Alex Mahon. I am currently the CEO of The Foundry, which is a software firm working in the creative industries. It's about 300-person company in 5 or 6 countries, just sold for 200 million, so sort of mid-cap company. And before this, I was CEO of Shine Group, which is a big group of television production companies, about 700 million sterling in turnover, maybe 1,000 or so people in 12 countries. And I did a physics PhD originally. And I'm also on the board at Ocado, so that's quite high tech too, bits and pieces of other things. So that's creative industries and technology.
Very exciting. Claudia?
I'm Claudia Vecuronium. I'm head of market research and customer experience for Eutelsat, which is the 3rd largest world satellite operator. We carry over 6,000 TV channels, 50 pay TV platforms globally. We're based in Paris, but with operations in over 80 countries. So I literally stumbled across technology. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a technical background. I grew up in Italy and eventually got into professional sports. I'm an ex-professional volleyball player. And that took me to play for an American university. So I grew up monolingual in a very normal and not international household. And then eventually my life completely changed. So I moved over to the States. In volleyball and in professional sports, I think that's where I also identified my first role models in terms of leadership, in terms of all sorts of things. And I studied communications and advertising first in college, and then moved on and went to San Francisco to get a master's in PR. And I had the chance to work in San Francisco in the late 90s. I'm giving shamefully away my age. So it was a great time. It was during the Clinton administration. It was the years in which the internet was starting and invented. I remember writing my first email, and it was unbelievably exciting. I started out working in an advertising agency specialized in multicultural communications. But I was, getting to know all these techies and all these people working in these startups, and I found it completely passionating and interesting to see how it was really impacting the way people work and the way, impacting life. And at some point, I had a chance to. I was contacted by a startup in Italy, which was at the forefront of the merging between broadcasting and IP. This was, again, late 90s, beginning of the year 2000, so way before IPTV, and was completely seduced by this whole world. So I joined them. I moved back to Europe. I went to Rome and helped them launch globally for a couple of years. The technology was working, was functioning. It was IP delivery via satellite, but it was way ahead of its time. We were clients of Eutelsat, and that's how eventually I got recruited by Eutelsat and discovered the whole world of satellites, which is a very fascinating world. I mean, we really expand, and we go from the aerospace industry on one hand. We launch an average of 3 to 4 satellites a year, and that's always extremely exciting for us. We have all our engineering team prepping up, and we follow the building of the satellites. We follow when it's being shipped to the launching place. Every time we launch a satellite, it's a huge party also back home, and it's a lot of fun to see. It's exciting. It's the last form of pioneering space, right? So it's really, I get really excited about that. And at the same time, I'm in my day job and in my functions, I'm more working with clients, which are primarily the media industry. 70% of the revenues come from broadcasting. So we have clients, as I mentioned, in over 80 countries, and that's also why I get to hang out in really fun events like Connected TV Summit and get to talk to our clients as well.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, we've got some interesting pictures. Some of these were sent by Claudia. So this is about unconscious bias. So we've got a couple of things we're going to talk about. Just some of the things that are stopping us from getting to where we need to be. But the key thing here is what we're trying to do is find out what are the 5 key industry actions we should be taking this year. And then how do we go about that? So that's where we're aiming to. So we're just going to talk a little bit freeform about that. But you sent me this. And I have to admit, when I looked at this, I laughed because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a victim of the same unconscious bias. I've done the same thing. You know, I look at this and I think, oh, that's wrong. But I don't think it's wrong when somebody says it to me. It's like, you can do it all. Of course I could do it all. I'm a woman, I can do it all. So tell me, you know, give me,
well,
talk me through some of those.
This is a very provocative advertising campaign that was launched last week for March 8th by TBWA, I think. TBWA, yes, which is a leading advertising agency. And I think it's extremely timely because it's, as you said, you know, we are, as women, we are all victim of this unconscious gender bias, you know, and we don't realize to what extent, on one hand, we put pressure on ourselves, thinking that we can have it all. Well, it's just, you know, it's a chimera, it's absolutely unfeasible. And on the other hand, though, you know, the men in our lives, in our personal and professional lives, are not always aware of that. And I think that this is really brilliant because it kind of like flips the roles. And I know that you have some other visuals later on as well, you know, with a Twitter account that plays on that, which really helps to kind of frame what is wrong with society today.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go on to some of those tweets and just have a look at them, and we can use some of them to talk about or talk about some other things. So this is from a man who has it all. And he says, talking to men is a minefield. You have to avoid bullying them, patronizing them, and treating them like objects. It's exhausting. Claire, CEO. Which I have to say is just, he does a great job of just flipping things. Here's the next one. Men, your gender doesn't have to hold you back, regardless of what your family, education system, history, politics, and the media tells you. It's like all the things you read in women's magazines. It's you know, it's amazing. This is exactly the messaging we get. Let's see. This is where it has a life of its own, this remote, I've heard. I'm not hung up on the label spokeswoman because I know it covers both women and men. John, age 50, spokeswoman for common sense. And I think I've got one more. Today's debate, can working fathers be good fathers?
We never asked that question, right?
So these are, and this last one, and I'll just leave this up to look at, is also from the same guy, and
or woman.
Yes. Or woman. Well, this is from the same guy who can have it all. I don't know if this is what people are afraid of, but let's just talk about it. What's you know, unconscious bias? What's going on? What are some of the issues that we need to address? And you know, what are the 5 key actions? So, Alex.
I don't know if I've got 5 key actions. So I was brought up in a house where my mother worked and was more stable and professional than my father, and she was a scientist, she was a pharmacist, right? So it never occurred to me that you would do anything different. Yeah. And it didn't occur to me when I did physics either. I mean, at first I thought when I went to do physics, that's great, because they said there were only 12% women. So I thought it'd be great, there'll be all these men. And then I got there and thought like, oh, all right. Not such rich pickings. So I've only ever done things where there's not that many women, and I probably am aggressive, regardless of whether that's a negative connotation I am. So partly I think that's clearly about role modeling and mentoring and sponsorship. Yeah. You know, I think there's clarity when you're recruiting to companies about what your policies are and all the things that Toby's talked about, and sort of being at the forefront of that. And there's also clarity, part of this, so I'm a female CEO in tech and media. You know, even in media, which is very female-friendly, women, of course, not being a minority, there have never been female CEOs, BBC, Channel 4, ITV, you know, they're not women at the very top, and tech's much worse than that is kind of what I've discovered moving into it. But I think, you know, one really has to be careful of this, the man who has it all, which I sent in, this sense that it's impossible or very, very unusual to have children and do that, you know, or to be feminine and do that. I think we have quite a lot of problems in society now that female interviews. So it's kind of interesting set of articles about if you're interviewed as a female in business, the profile will always mention how many children you have. It's fine at an event like this, but it will always say, and they're married, and their husband works. People go, I've got quite a lot of children. So they're constantly, that's amazing, you've got 4 children. And I now say to men, well, I mean, I suppose it proves I'm fertile and I can't say no. It doesn't prove anything else, does it? I mean, it sort of proves, it doesn't prove where I'm a good mother. It doesn't prove whether those children are going to grow up unaffected by war. It doesn't prove anything, right? It just proves that I had them. That's, you know, you don't know anything about me. Or they go like, you have a husband. And they always say, and does your husband work? Because they want, what's your husband do? Because they want to hear that either my husband is like a hedge fund manager, so I've got loads of money and therefore no problems, or they want to hear that he's a stay-at-home husband. He's neither, unfortunately. Because then I fit into one of those things. So I think, you know, I mean, I'm in the media. That's incumbent on us in the media to sort of stop those stereotypes. If you read the Sunday Times business profile, it's always a man, and he always actually lives in the country with his second wife, but has a flat in Mayfair, and always gets up at 5:30 in the morning because that's what success looks like, you know. Whereas I sort of scramble out of bed at 7:30, mainly going, oh God, we're going to be late again, you know, because I don't like getting up. So that's very, we're never taught. So media, I think, if I had to come up with an action, which I'm coming up with now, that would be the media, our own subconscious bias in the media, right?
Yeah.
About how we write about women who are doing things and kind of how we report upon that. Because the personal, it's never just, they do this job, they do it really well, bang. You know, it's always the other side.
Yeah.
There's becoming a bit of unconscious bias fatigue. And scientists are now coming up with sort of research that suggests that the more we know about unconscious bias, in fact, it's going the other way, because people are now so aware of their unconscious biases that they're making the opposite decisions. And what has proven to be one of the most effective ways of addressing unconscious bias is just spending time with people that are different to us. So,
Good advice.
Mixed race households, for example, have a lot less unconscious bias in those adults because they grew up living amongst different ethnicities. And so, as a person with a disability, I actually invite myself to dinner, people's dinners. So, because if you invite me to dinner, you'll get to know me better, and you'll be able to get to know me and understand that I could do a job that you're hiring for. So, if anyone wants me to come around for dinner tonight, then let me know. And I think that's one of the things. But the problem is where you have homogenous organisations, that's very difficult to crack.
Yeah.
Because if you have a predominant in-group in that organisation, they're not necessarily being exposed to difference.
Yeah. That's very, very good points.
Well,
yes.
if I can follow up on that, the role that media plays, obviously, it's crucial, I think. You know, we don't realize to what extent media really can shape society, can really shape through popular culture, and it can really make or enable the future generation of women or keep on wing-clipping them by providing certain stereotype and certain roles. And in that sense, I'd like to just bring the example of something which is really innovative, which is happening in France. We're based in Paris. The Conseil National de Supérieur de la Communication, which is the National Communication Authority, has been tackling this very formally already for a couple of years, since 2012. They established quotas for the public broadcasters for the moment, and then the private will have to follow, making sure that there's the proper representation of women on screen, on news, on sitcom comedies, and especially debates. You know, in France, they love to have a lot of political debates in the evening, and up until a couple of years ago, you would only see expert men on any given subject. And now they're really making sure that it is, that it is addressed. They established a public list of expert women. They invite women periodically to sign up and to manifest themselves, and then bring them up on screen. Because it's important, whatever younger women see on TV as well, it will affect them into believing what is possible or not possible in their future.
Very much so.
For me, it's been looking at constants. So when we looked at trying to motivate kids into STEM, we looked at the constants they had in their lives. So if you're 10 years old, you're going to have your parents around, you're going to have a teacher for a year, and you may have your favourite sitcom.
Yes.
I would argue now that with the proliferation of media, that kids are so saturated that you wonder about, even for marketing campaigns, about, you know, if it's actually going to have an effect. So for me, it's about the relationship to start with the parents have with their kids.
Yes.
You know, we've got examples of mother who was who's a scientist, and you're going on to a technical career. Did you feel, for instance, you know, you could do that because mum did it? Or was it because it was often a role model? For me, I went into engineering because there was a teacher at school who said, it's pretty cool, hang around at lunchtimes and play around with the machines. I mean, you certainly couldn't do it nowadays. But I got to explore, make some errors, and have great fun. So for me, it's about, it's that relationship. There was and I tried to look up the origin of the article, but to summarize the article about attainment, there was a conversation about the pressure that we put on boys and girls for attainment at school. And it went something along the lines of a group of American university students were polled, and they were asked what grades they felt were acceptable. So the chap said, A, brilliant. B, yep. C, yep. D, still good enough for government work. E, no way. Relative for the girls, they went A, yes, B, no. Now, our children, I hope, are a product of our activity and the influences we put them in front of.
Yes.
Be it uncles and aunties and etc. and their experiences. I think that we need to look very closely at and it is unconscious bias, but I think it starts at the family level. And that really is the key. And I've seen this correlation. We've done engineering presentations and presentations on Bloodhound, and I've had mum come down to the front to have a chat, and daughter is doing, so mum is in engineer, daughter's doing engineering at Cambridge. And I've seen this multiple times, that I can do it, so you can do it. And it's motivated me in parts of my career, nothing to do with gender, but in terms of I'm going through a difficult period, and it's tough, but there's someone who may have been in my peer group and they've done it, so I can do it too. And I think we need to start at the family level with the unconscious bias.
Great, wonderful.
I agree, and to continue, I think you mentioned the two things. One is the family, the other one is the school level. Yes. And as I told a couple of you guys just before coming up here, is that last week I was at a school play. And so it was a mixed school, so a good thing. And the theme was about elderly wanting to leave the home they were in, and so they went on strike and stuff like that. Funny play. But so the director of the home was a director, but they didn't have enough boys, so they took a girl. But instead of making it a female director, they drew a beard on the girl. So, and then you go like, okay. And then you think, okay, but who made this play? And it was the teachers, and it was, so after they thanked everybody that helped to create a play, and so it was on the teachers on one hand, and it was the parents of the kids that help out the school on the other hand. I don't know how it's in Britain. In Belgium, 80, I would say to 90% of the teachers are women. The people that help out, the parents that help out, same thing. You get ratios, 80%, 90%, because each time if there's heavy lifting to be done, they need to call out to the dads, because there's too many women on the parent board, if you can call it like that. But so none of those had the idea to say, you know what, let's make the director a woman. And so I was really, it's like, come on guys, how can you, or come on girls, how can you do this? And I agree, it needs to happen there. There just needs to be a click saying, okay, let's just make it a woman.
What concerns me is this is an oil tanker that we're going to try and turn around, and it's going to take a long time. When I've, and again, reflecting on this subject, it's got a lot to do, in my opinion, about the function of business as well. You look at a great example about Lego. They needed to make money, and it was, let's have some pink Lego, and let's have some blue and red yellow as a Lego. And that, for their business,
was great.
And but then that perpetuates, because they're making sales, that perpetuates the gender divide. I did a tweet which I intentionally wanted to cause a bit of a stir and some conversation about a block of carbon fibre that was produced at a show, and it had pink sparkles on it. And I intentionally wrote, wow, pink sparkles, really like it. Is this the best way to get girls into engineering? And I'd have this violent, and this is sort of 10 o'clock at night on Twitter, this violent conversation about gender stereotypes and it was pink is unacceptable, we can't do that. But my counterpoint was, and again, I wasn't looking to make a statement for or against. It was to have that discussion to say, are we going to try and boil the ocean and get rid of all the pink Lego? Or for my industry, for engineering, is it it attracted my eye because it had pink sparkles in it. But if it attracts the eye, then you can have a more meaningful conversation about the substance and the actual why it's carbon fibre, and you have a much more substantial conversation. Do we use gender imbalance to start the conversation, and then we go on to a much more balanced and honest conversation we have with boys and girls?
That's a very good point. I think IBM got it wrong with the Haka hairdryer, but that didn't go well.
Sounds hideous. I mean, I think the thing what's happened in the UK is that we haven't necessarily set the level of formal quotas, but having very clear targets for women on boards has fundamentally changed the non-exec picture in the UK. Yeah. It's had a 25% target for all the FTSE boards.
Have we met the target?
Yes, but what's happened is there is, it depends if you put it at FTSE 250 or 100, but yeah.
But largely you've met your target.
The problem is that loads of women have now found that you can go and make enough money by being a serial non-exec, and they've left the exec workforce. So there's less female executives on boards.
So by measuring
it, so we've created an unintended consequence of it, because of course there is a market demand for women non-execs. So you can go and do 3 of those. You don't have to strive for the exec position on a board, so there's sort of less talent there in the market. But what the learning has been from boards is one's not enough. You need 2. Whatever you are in the minority in that group, women not being a minority, you need at least 2 to change the conversation and to have bravery. And I'm chair of the Royal Television Society Awards, and we just changed that. So I changed all the juries to change the BAME, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic mix. That's a big problem in the media. And I was at a minimum of 2 on every jury. In fact, we got to 27% from sort of sub 5 last year. But you need at least 2 people in the room to not feel that you're the only one.
Well, that
people are looking at.
2 is a really interesting number, because EY, the consultancy firm, did an A/B test between 2 very similar consulting teams, and they found out that where a team was either headed up by a female partner or had at least 2 senior female managers, that client engagement team was 30% more profitable than the kind of the usual team that they would have sent out to their clients. Because to me, diversity is, it does boil down to the bottom line. I think a lot of organizations are talking about diversity and how it's important to be diverse, but it is just good for business. Why are organizations like Airbnb hiring chief diversity officers that are now sitting on the board alongside the CFO and the CEO, etc.? So it's just good for business.
There's a clear correlation. There's plenty of studies that show that, that the most famous one is from MIT that came out about 5 years ago already, and it's being, divulgated a lot. But there's a real correlation between the diversity of a group and the impactful and the return of investment, actually, so and the profitability. And that is why, diversity is good for companies. It's not that women necessarily bring better skills, but it's the collective intelligence of a decisional group has a higher IQ, and so better decisions are made. And then just to follow up on what you said on, on the women non-exec missing, that's where I think that mentoring and women's networks are very efficient as well. It's something that is happening a lot today. We founded, together with other 7 colleagues at Eutelsat, we co-founded about 18 months ago a women's network, and we aim to really sensitize, inspire, and connect the women in our company with our ecosystem, which is the aerospace on one side, but also media and technology on the other. And it's been only 18 months, but it's been unbelievable, the level of awareness that this type of activities, we do events, we do networking events, we do professional development events, and it's just really completely flipped the self-awareness of a lot of our younger colleagues who, were not even thinking about maybe career development or this type of things. So it's very important to be able to, to enable this type of activities. And in terms of mentoring, we just participated in a European Commission-sponsored program called Me Totem. It was facilitated by a professional women association from Milan. So they connected us actually with other companies in Europe. We worked together with Oracle and Sanofi Pasteur, and basically creating, connecting mentors and mentees across companies. And it was very, very successful as well. It's something that we're looking into repeating now on a larger scale.
Wonderful. Does anybody in the audience have any questions you'd like to ask? Can we get a microphone?
Thanks. Fran Cassidy. I wanted to ask Ollie, because I was really impressed with the stories that you were explaining on through the slides earlier. Clearly, those stories are fantastic for that small group of children, for girls. How do you scale that experience? Because you may be talking to, I don't know, 20, 30, maybe 200, but how do you scale that so you can affect more and have much, much bigger effect?
The Bloodhound Project's very lucky, actually. Today it's working with BBC Microbit and through its partner with Microsoft to launch the Rocket Car Challenge nationally in a series of hubs. After a lot of bootstrapping from the Bloodhound end, we found a decentralized approach. So effectively, in your local school, so we've been to Pimlico Academy many times here in London, we would set that up as a hub, and it would draw in all the primary schools into it. And they'd have the training, and I was up in Scotland 2 weeks ago training up university staff, college staff, and also army teams in both Glasgow and Edinburgh to be able to deliver that themselves. So we're spreading it across the country. Please look out for it. Our intent is to, and again, reinforced by BBC Microbit, is to be able to deliver the Rocket Car Challenge to every child in the country by 2018. So we are hot on the heels.
A bit of a left field question here, Vanessa. We're undergoing huge immigration across certainly Europe. We're seeing a huge shift of people around, and there's a pushback on that. We're feeling that in the governments. Now, if we're talking about diversity, have you got an opinion on, we've got some amazingly talented people that are coming onto our doorsteps and in a really horrible situation. And I realize we have to start at home and work with our kids, and you guys are doing amazing, by the way. Congratulations. Have you got a comment on that? How do we reach people in these hard situations they're in and try and motivate them? And are you doing anything in that area?
I think the first thing that strikes me is that...
the BBC know the answer. Go, Toby, go. BBC's got the answer for you.
One of the phrases that there's this fantastic lady in America called Verna Myers, who's a diversity consultant specializing in the legal sector. And one of her catchphrases is that diversity is a given, but inclusion is a choice. And if we were to say, if we take a domain like Europe, the continent, and we look at the diversity of Europe, the sands are shifting and the diversity is shifting. But what we're left with is our own personal choice at an individual and an organizational level to include or to exclude. So there are highly talented people out there. Now, we can either decide to include them or exclude them. I would prefer to be in an organization that opts to include them, because at the end of the day, it's about talent. The BBC, where I work, we're under huge pressure to deliver products and services. And when I've got hiring managers knocking on my desk going, I am dying to get more people onto my team to build the next generation of iPlayer or whatever. And I want to try and make it as easy as possible for them to tap into the talent pool. And I don't believe organizations are tapping into all of the talent pools that are necessarily available. It's like when I was young and my dad took me fishing, I used to complain in the village where we lived, there was like this, this place with lots of different fishing ponds. And I used to complain to my dad. I say, why am I not getting the fish that I want. I want this big fish to take home to mum so that we can have a big fish for dinner. And Dad was like, well, you're spending all your time on this pond. What about all the other 6 ponds around you? And I was like, oh yeah, then the penny dropped. So then I went to the other pond and I got a big fish. I think this is what organisations are doing. They're looking in the wrong pond. Or they're focusing on one pond and there are 6 ponds out there.
Well, they're looking in the one they know.
Oh, they're certainly looking in the ones that they know.
Yeah.
So go and look in the ponds. You know, it's a small proportion of people that live on the autism spectrum are in employment. Yeah, there's a huge untapped talent pool out there. So why aren't we tapping into that particular talent pool?
I think also in terms of answering the question, so look through the eyes of a millennial. We're interconnected. I can have a phone call on WhatsApp with my friends in the valley. It's easy. And the technology provides it for me. Separate to the Army's position, obviously, in terms of national security to one side, the work that I do privately with startups, it's about talent. You know, and my personal opinion is it's where talent endures. If you've got the goods, my personal opinion is it's about employment. And it doesn't matter where that person is from. It doesn't matter what their gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation is. It doesn't matter. It's about, for the companies that I support, and to reinforce what Toby was saying, is do you contribute to the bottom line? I don't care who you are, can you deliver? And that for me personally is massively important because it's a function of business.
But, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, but I would say by observation, the people at the top of the company need to want to change, the chairman, the CEO. When it is made the responsibility of chief diversity officer or somewhere in the HR division, nothing sort of happens. Occasionally they jump on the bandwagon. That sort of, but a lot of companies, especially in media, you risk kind of aging out. If you're consistently run by like 60 plus, no, but now I'm going to insult some people, 60 plus white men, right? You'll never be in contact with a millennials audience. You'll never move to digital and social media. You'll never see the changes in the industry. Yeah. You won't have a diverse workforce that come up with different ideas. And ultimately, the company will age out. So, I mean, that's your point about more profitability in companies. But you have to sort of start, you have to engage some people at the top of the company to be interested. Absolutely. Otherwise, it's very hard to make senior change. And you make junior change at the level in the company, and people are fighting, and then they leave and go somewhere else.
Which is why I think your point on non-exec directors, I think is so important in terms of your Maria, your sort of your 5 points, is that is an opportunity to sit with the governance of that company and to start steering that oil tanker left or right. And you can do that by, you know, starting at the bottom and working your way up to the top, but I think that's too late. Going at board level, getting involved in the governance and pulling at what is, as you described, probably a 60-year-old, mostly male board and say, come on chaps, we need to change. Otherwise we're going to go under.
But what I'm going to ask is, because we have to wrap up now, is for you to give in one sentence, everyone, your top point for what we should change or what you want to see as an action. Claudia?
Can I start? Which is, you know, the point that I wanted to make, also following up with what you just said, is I'd like to see more senior men business leaders really marrying the cause and really understanding, you know, their role, their critical role in enabling women in the industry, in our industry, but in every industry. And I'd like to bring one example in the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, that's been a lot on the press. Mark Benioff is the CEO of Salesforce.com, which is one of the biggest companies out of Silicon Valley, cloud-based. He's been very vocal about this. He did a very simple exercise. He used his own software internally to check and count to see if there was gender imbalance in the pay. And there was 30% discrepancies among his staff. And he said, you know what, this is wrong, we're gonna fix it. And he puts $3 million on the table on the next year's budget to fix this. He's doing it, he's talking about it. This is like a concrete step that speaks loudly about the person, but also the culture of the company. It sends a huge message to his own organization, to the industry, and to society. So my one action would be to see more leaders in our industry taking the same step.
Great. Alex?
I don't know if there's I've found lots of men really helpful in this and committed to the cause, but it made this like different experience. I think so I would just say encouraging girls into STEM subjects, right? That's sort of where you start.
Okay.
And that's still, for many girls, considered the hard choice. And I think that you start from there, you know, and then you have the field.
I'd say if you've got a fire in your belly to improve the diversity and inclusion of your organization, regardless of what level you're at, just go out and create a number of experiments that really tries to get diversity and inclusion into the DNA or the fabric of your organization. That could, for example, fish in more ponds, as an example.
Wonderful.
It's governance at the top. It's women on boards, and specifically with non-exec directors, because of your agility to sit on 3-4 boards at one time.
Excellent. Tamara?
I would say that combined with inviting people and inviting especially women to take away their own boundaries and just to take some risk and then just to try. Failure is not bad. To try and have failed is better than not to have tried at all.
Yes.
Very true. Please thank all of them. They're absolutely wonderful.